This is Chapter 4, A Praxis for Cultivating Intuition. Each of us has the capacity for intuitive experience. All of us can cultivate a personal relationship with our intuitive function. And while we're all intuitive, it also seems that some people are more intuitive than others. This isn't a judgment, just a fact. Like how some people are more emotionally intelligent or more rational or better at math. For some people, intuition is such a natural, easy way of being that they aren't even aware of it as they use it. And for others of us, accessing and trusting intuition is not so easy breezy. We might understand that intuition is a valuable companion of consciousness, but we're not in the regular habit of hearing it or recognizing what it has to say. Recognizing our intuitive capabilities can be complicated because we all use and connect to intuitive experience differently. There are such diverse types of content that we can come to know, and the intuitive mode shows up for each of us in unique ways. Some people are intuitive in the sense that they can connect deeply to other people's emotional vibes. Others are best at knowing their own next right move. Still others can intuitively sense the influx of collective waves, trends, or events. Some intuitive experiences are practical, while others don't seem to have a function. For example, I often have an intuitive sense of the big picture, a visionary sense of the future. I remember being about 7 years old in the 1980s, struck by the intuitive impression of a scene where people could communicate with each other by a computer-like device worn on their wrists, like a watch. I might have been onto something, but that kind of prophetic inner vision doesn't necessarily help me decide whether I should book my dentist appointment for this Tuesday or next. Most importantly, no matter where any of us start on the intuitive spectrum, we can all cultivate our intuitive abilities. Remember Estes' story of Vasilisa, whose doll gets carried around in her pocket? She needs to be fed. We have to nurture our intuition, and we can do this by following a path of intentional practice. The path of practice for cultivating intuition arises from understanding intuition on its own terms. Everything we know intuition to be, all of it, from sudden realizations to experiences of transpersonal awareness, shapes how we go about developing a relationship to intuitive experience. And while I told you in Chapter 1 that this will be more of a why-to book than a how-to, this second half of the book explores the why of intuition development, the why of the how, if you will. In the first half of the book, I've laid out a theory about intuition on its own terms. Here's a quick summary of what we've learned so far. Intuition is an experience, process, or way of knowing, or mode of consciousness. Experiencing intuition is a relationship, a matter of connection and resonance. Now we add a third tenet. While understanding intuition on its own terms can help us accept and enhance intuitive experiences, a framework of any kind doesn't cultivate intuitive experience on its own. Practice does. This path of practice can help improve anyone's intuition, no matter how intuitive or not you think you are. Intuition development is a process anchored in self-awareness and self-compassion that helps us connect more deeply with our consciousness and context, inner and outer experience. If there's an underlying belief to this book, it's that pursuing intuition development enhances our relationship to ourselves and encourages us to live more fully with more ease and connection. What follows in this part of the book is a discussion of resources and strategies for cultivating an intuitive way of being in the world. Practice as practice. Before I say even one word about the components of intuition development, I want to address what seems to be an epidemic of anxiety about self-development and self-improvement. For those of us raised in the neoliberal consumer capitalist culture, there's a widespread feeling that we should always be bettering ourselves, that we must continuously work to become better than we are. Self-cultivation as self-care and as community care gets interpreted as self-improvement, usually for the benefit of material, not psycho-spiritual goals. I can only hope that thinking about cultivating intuition does not add to anyone's anxiety or feelings of inadequacy. I'm not suggesting that someone should pursue this path of self-development, only that it's possible. It's here if you want it. You don't actually have to do anything to be more intuitive other than realize that you already are intuitive. But if you do want to trust your intuition more and have it be more present for you, that's possible too. We practice intuition development so intuitive perception can become second nature, so that it arises more readily, and so we are receptive and alert to intuitive experiences when they arise. With practice, we can come to trust our intuitive experiences because they have developed the ability to discern the meanings contained in our unique intuitive expression. Over time, practice lets us recognize the feeling of intuitive experience for what it is, intuition, as opposed to fear, desire, or projection. Through practice, we learn to discern the different communicative channels that exist in our psyche. Through the gut, where we can recognize butterflies and excitement as distinct from indigestion, and flushes on the skin, smells, visual disturbances, inner visions, and experiences from any of the other senses, and signals from the mind, its thought processes, and habits of attention. Over time, we get in touch with what it feels like to hear the small, still inner voice that guides us away from harm and towards wholeness. And while I can tell you about these techniques and even guide you through how to do them, without you putting in the inner work, nothing much will happen. The most important takeaway here is that this path of practice is an ongoing process, not a project. Intuitive development is never perfected. This is because the techniques for cultivating intuition are transformative. As we undertake them, we are changed and our experiences change. And since we are always changing and developing, and there is always more self to unpack, there is no ultimate arrival point or mastery, though there can be more ease. And please don't think of this as a call to struggle or to endlessly seek more achievement. It's just a note that practice is a lifelong process of unfolding awareness. Remember, we're fine. We don't need fixing. Cultivating intuition is transformative praxis. The process of becoming more attuned to intuitive experience gets variously called awakening, discovering, uncovering, igniting, and more, words that describe a process of realization. They all point to the idea that the capacity to be intuitive is already present, but that it has been covered up, hidden, or forgotten beneath layers of culture, values, and assumptions. And if intuition is a capacity, then cultivating it involves more than mastering techniques. It's not just something we learn to do, it's someone we become. Through practice, we become more self aware, more receptive to intuitive experience, and more able to intelligently discern its meaning. The practices reorient our attention and awareness, creating an enhanced relationship to our lives that becomes the foundation of intuitive experience. The result is living more fully, being more present, more connected, more engaged. As we come to experience who we are and who we might become, and what we know, what we can know, are not distinct factors. The contemplative and reflective work of intuition development connects us more directly with the context of our experience. We come to know ourselves as we are in the present and recognize who we are in relation to the context of our lives. Then, as we shift how we relate to our inner and outer experiences, we can come to know more. Along the way, we might need to unpack aspects of ourselves we have neatly tucked away and restore wholeness to our psyche. This is healing work. The program of practice for cultivating intuition laid out here can help us transform, even revolutionize, how we relate to commonly held assumptions about all kinds of things. What can be known, who can know, who we even are. Doing this work actually expands our context into dimensions of conscious experience beyond what we previously knew to be available. And in this way, becoming more intuitive also means coming into greater awareness of aspects of our world that many don't even consider as real. Yes, the multidimensional, invisible world, the unseen. As a result of these practices, our self identity might shift. We may start to identify more strongly with aspects of the self beyond the surface and outside the individual ego, like the personal unconscious and collective intersubjective consciousness. We might move from thinking of ourselves as a solitary conscious individual to knowing ourselves as an interdependent, multidimensional being. Shifting how we identify, we can move into increased resonance with psychic vibrations and begin to perceive, recognize, and act on intuitive impressions. The techniques presented here are developmental practices that belong to transpersonal psychology, and more importantly, to the wisdom traditions and schools of philosophy that have engaged in these psychological, philosophical, and spiritual activities for thousands of years, seeking moreness to enrich and enable a deeper, more ethical, and more meaningful life. What they have in common are they're all undertaken to enable transformation, a deliberate change in consciousness. And that's why I'm calling intuition development a praxis. Praxis refers to embodying or practicing ideas and values. More than learning about ideas, there's a commitment to living those ideas out in the world. There's an implication that the practice is done with a commitment to acting in ways that serve to heal the world and change society for the better. The educator Paulo Freire defined praxis as reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. This echoes an idea embedded in New Age culture that psycho-spiritual transformation and the practices that we do to cultivate it don't only change the individuals who undertake them, but that this work can also bring about societal change. We're not only changing ourselves by doing this work, we're changing the world. I told you this was healing work. Introducing intuitive life practice. The path of practice for cultivating intuition rests on three interconnected pillars: mindset, awareness, and discernment. By mindset, I mean a mind that is prepared with knowing what intuition is. The practice in this pillar is cultivating an orientation to valuing intuitive experience, even when it's uncanny or weird and violates taboos. The awareness pillar refers to a body and mind that is prepared to pay attention to intuitive experience. It's all about cultivating a relaxed, receptive consciousness, calm attention, nuanced sensitivity, receptive awareness, being in flow, and creative or restful surrender. And discernment is the ability to understand or to judge wisely. Here, we cultivate a willingness to be uncertain and bear the risk of that uncertainty in balance with a nuanced sense of conviction. Discernment is a habit of self-awareness that helps us learn to trust our intuitive experiences and to recognize ourselves as trustworthy, intuitive beings. Each of these pillars of practice is important, but remember, this is a why-to book, not a how-to. Everyone doesn't need to do all the practices. As transformative praxis, intuitive life practice is a matter of strengthening and deepening your relationship with yourself. Rather than it being a program, think of cultivating intuition as a direction of development, a lifelong journey to becoming more intuitive, and in the process of becoming more of who you are.